Welcome to the Strategy Mob Podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy Mob. Today, I have a very special guest, just north of me, actually, and we've been meaning to connect for a while, and I'm so excited about our topics today. It is just going to be a blast to jam with Carla Ksonzek. Carla, thank you so much for taking the time to hang with me today.
Hey, Jason, it's great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
What a crazy year, right?
I know. And you know what? I don't know about you, but right now, this is like the coldest day that we've had.
Oh,
this
yeah,
year
here
so
too.
far.
It's like minus 17. Like my dog this morning was like, I'm not going outside. Yeah.
I didn't want to go outside.
Oh my God. Yes, it's finally here, but Mother Nature has spared us, so we're not buried in about 3 feet of snow like we usually are in November.
Not yet, but don't jinx us. We're gonna get there. Hey, Carla, I thought it'd be fun to kick off today's podcast before we kind of get into our deep conversation with a little origin story. So what is the origin story that is Carla Ksonzek?
Oh my God. Well, we have to go back a long time because even though the visual is a little blurred, which can hide my wrinkles, I've actually been in this industry for about 25 years now. So this year I'm celebrating my 25th anniversary. I was living in Vancouver in the 90s, which was amazing. And I got recruited by Michelin Canada coming back to Quebec because my husband and I were doing some Toyota racing out west. So we were always car people. We always loved tinkering with engine. When people went out on Saturday night to the bars, we went to the garage and hung around an engine hoist.
That is so cool.
So those are our people. So when I got recruited, it was absolutely amazing. So Michelin came back to Montreal, worked for them for 12 years, and I took care of the car dealership in Eastern Ontario, some of them in the Maritimes and in Quebec and in Vancouver. And I was traveling a lot, and really I was in sales. But as a young person, selling a product is about a lot more than just knowing your product. It's about teaching other people how to sell it, right? So I spent a lot of times building trainings for service departments, parts departments, so that we can, surf that tire wave that was coming our way in the late 90s, early 2000s. We wanted to keep more customers in the dealership past the 3-year service mark. Tires were a way to do that. When we trained people, we took a pulse and took a look at tire sales, brake sales, alignment sales afterwards, and everything was spiking. So I started doing spring and fall. I think by the time I was 30 and I had my first daughter, I had trained about 4,000 to 5,000 people in Canada on the service side of things when it comes to demonstrating value and really talking to the consumer about, obviously a good, better, best, but we want to start with the best because we want to have their best interest at heart. So I went on to the sales side of things with Auto Trader. And that was amazing because I got to go to the US. I got to work with dealer.com. We got to see in 2008, when we all got hit over the head with a stick, what was happening to the consumer journey in terms of going more online. So really exciting time, websites becoming more friendly, the user experience becoming fantastic. Except for when all these leads were pushed to dealers, the responses kind of sounded like, Robert De Niro in 1991. So lead response, I started focusing there. And I left Auto Trader 6 years ago to start my own company dealing with dealer groups, manufacturers, and single rooftops to really put together highly quality responses to leads depending on the situation, follow-up process, and how to improve overall digital communication, because whether you're dealing with leads or maturities or the service customer, it's all going to come down, and much more so today than ever, on how you can communicate via email, phone, video, text, and all the platforms that we're adding on. So that's my story. And after, 6 years, it's been about 2,000 participants. So that's a lot of
Wow.
participants,
That is.
but that's all face-to-face. So now the business, of course, is shifting online. So I look forward to continuing to provide lead management training, but in a studio such as yourself, Jason. So there's my story for you.
That's awesome. This is truly one of those industries that, kind of gets in your blood, and you had it very early on. I think you probably had gasoline in your blood. So,
Yeah, I still had.
I was kind of the same way. Like cars were just kind of a thing. In fact, I remember me and my dad, we sold baseball cards on the road. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, right? And that was really big. I mean, it was just a big thing. And I remember even then just playing like games where it's like we would identify the car driving towards us. And, of course, as the sun went down, it would get harder and harder. You'd have to start identifying the car just by the silhouette of it or its headlights. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I can even still do that today. Something
It's
like
so cool, right?
a little Chrysler K car coming down the road. I'm like, I know which one that is. But yeah, I do find like that is kind of a consistent pattern I find with a lot of us in the automotive industry. We just always had a big passion for it. But I think that passion is what keeps us going. And this kind of leads into the discussion that we're having today is that, our passion is not just our passion's for the dealership, which thus just makes our passion for the customer. It's 2021 and we're still talking about how to connect, that customer expectations and experience. And, it's on one side, I'm like, are we still really talking about this? Like, we still have to have conversation. The other side of me, it's like, hey, it is what it is. We got to have this conversation. So let's start with that. Because I think, customers' expectations has changed in just a huge, huge way in the last 9 months. Probably more, probably more than the last 9 months and has in the last probably 40 years combined. So I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on kind of how you see that customer expectations have changed in the last 9 months.
Well, I mean, it's definitely sped things up, right? I mean, we knew that even before this pandemic, a lot more people were going online. A lot more people were sending out forms, reaching out to us through different ways. Social was starting to be a thing. Facebook Marketplace launched like 3 years ago or something like that. A lot more traffic was coming through there. And of course, we have those stories about waiting for the up bus, right? Things like that. But, more and more people, like I remember when I started working with dealers on this side of things, on the training side of things, there was maybe 10 or 15% of the business that was coming in from online. After this last 9 months, I mean, we're looking at 50 to 60% in some cases of the business coming from that source, right? From that traffic source. And it's not a different customer, it's the same customer that used to come in or used to call, but with everything that's happened, we know that customer have wanted to do more at a distance for a while, right? Let's not kid ourselves, right? Although you have an urge as a salesperson to just say, well, when can you come in? We can do so much more here. We can evaluate your trade. We can come up with pricing. Well, customers have been wanting this information before they come in, right? And the pandemic has just caused us to rip the Band-Aid, right? So in terms of providing some of the obstacles that stand in the way of the customer, a little bit more at a distance. So through digital, through video, through text messaging. The messages from the last 9 months is we need to remove every single obstacle that we used to put in the way of the customer to slow them down, to speed them up, right?
Well, you know what? I've just read recently some really cool stats on that, actually. There was a study actually done here in Canada of right around 20,000, in-market shoppers. And, 67% of them said that, they would like to start the process, online. They didn't say they wanted to buy the car. No, but their expectation is that they could at least start the process online. And the two big desires and factors for that was convenience. Yeah. And the other one was just they felt like it would be less pressure when they came into the dealership if they were able to do more prior to coming in. Do you feel the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, that's always been our theory and our vision, that if you help them remove those obstacles on their own term, you're going to open up communication. And it's a probabilities game, right? I mean, we are talking about sales. This is not new. Follow up on your prospects, provide them with value,
Yeah.
always have something for them to take a look at and keep the communication going. But in terms of what's happening, in terms of, evaluating their trade, there's a few things that customers want to do before coming in. And if I could say to a salesperson, I usually start the training with that is in terms of when you get an email, there's a message that's written there. And it's written white on white. So sometimes you can't read it, but you got to assume it's there.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sending you an email, it's because I'm not ready to come in yet.
That's very true.
There's that customer saying, I have an interest. I have a few questions before I move forward. Who's going to provide me with clear communication, content, so that I can bring my decision forward? And it's all about differentiating ourselves, right? So they're going to send out 5 or 6 inquiries. Some of them are not even going to get responded to. Can you believe that's still happening in 2021?
I love the fact that you said inquiries. Like, I know, like, I can sometimes get a stickler for language. But I love the fact that you said inquiries, because that's what we, when I kind of first started in this business, one of my first roles was, director of internet operations, because they had no idea what the hell else to call me. And, but we called them inquiries, because that's legitimately what they are. I don't know where and at what point in time in our industry we started changing these things and calling them leads. Because then I think the dealership's expectations.
Sure, you got to bucket them all in,
right? Like it's crazy. Yeah. It's absolutely no. You said one other thing, and I just because again, it's something that blows my mind today, right? That I think a lot of dealerships out there are probably on their 15th, 20th, maybe 25th year of having a website, depending how early they bought into a website. Sure. But don't you think it's still insane that the only 2 forms of communications that we really give as an option when it comes to filling out a form is email? I mean, who the hell uses email in the first place? And then phone? Like, I mean, look, everybody knows. In fact, you even did it yourself. Everybody knows you don't call me if you want to get a hold of me. If you do, I'll call you back in the next 24 hours. If you email me, it's going to be probably 48 hours. But if you LinkedIn message me, you did that just before we started. You got to respond immediately. So don't you think it's weird that we haven't embraced that in our websites?
Well, it is weird, but it's also typical at the same time, because we are slow to adopt. I mean, as an industry, we are slow to adopt in terms of CRM. Let's just use that example. Business to business, whether you're a pharmaceutical rep, whether you're going out there working for the telecom companies, you've had to deal with a CRM. And nobody's going to show up at a pharmaceutical meeting and say, well, I'm not going to use the CRM because I have an Excel spreadsheet and I have everybody in my cell phone and that's how I'm going to work, right?
That's true.
They would say, get the fuck out.
That is exactly what they would say.
But in auto, we tolerated this, right? We tolerated this for so long that now I think is really the time to take a look at, what we do, how people contact us. Video is growing, FaceTime is growing, chat on the website, like not, somebody who's just there to ask the customer 35 times for their name, blood type, right? And telephone number, but somebody who's actually there to say, hey, you're interested in this vehicle? Great. Let me connect you to a product specialist.
Like actually have a real conversation.
I'm here. I'm at the store. I'm not in India. And I'm going to talk to you about the pulling capacity on that GMC Duramax, right? So, we have to be careful on all these buttons we're putting on. Like, I think web form is old school, like you said. We need to have it. I think it's a necessary evil, but certainly only having those options on your website, phone and email, that's kind of archaic in the world where we live, where really our responsibility is to communicate with our customers throughout their preferred method of communication, not ours, right?
I love the fact that you say that, because we're talking about kind of customer expectations, and I find that there's a lot of little micro events as far as their expectations now, but the overall umbrella of what the customer expects now, especially this year, is they want to feel like they're in the driver's seat. They want to feel like they're in control. But I'm curious, kind of how do you kind of translate that out? What do you think it means to have the customer in control of the experience?
Well, listen, I mean, in sales, we talk about giving control or giving the illusion of control. Let's not forget our sales training, right? Yep. So there's a lot of strategies you can use Customers do want to feel in control. And that's not really rocket science, because if you look at ourselves, like I want to talk to everybody that's listening now, look at yourself as a customer. What are your expectations in terms of communication when you want an ad, another house to your insurance company, or you want to refinance your mortgage, or you want to call a contractor out to set up an extension on your house? What are your expectations when it comes to customer service, when it comes to clarity, when it comes to sharing estimates, right? When it comes to providing proof that, you're the right person for the job. So it's not difficult to imagine what customers' expectations are. They want a quick interaction, because time is the most precious commodity to us all. They want to be able to have more than what they're asking for. They want to be enlightened, and they also want to be entertained as well, in terms of, this is an exciting time. They're considering a vehicle, right? So we have to position the value of that particular piece of metal or that particular service that they're asking about, whether it's subprime, whether it's evaluating their trade. And we have to bring them to the next level of commitment, right? So in terms of how we communicate going forward, I think it's very important for us to really this year tell our customers that we will do it according to their preferred method, whether they're a chatter, whether they're a texter, whether they want us to maybe do a video walk around for them, send it later on so they can enjoy it with their wife at home or over the weekend. We have to be ready to say, hey, I'm here, but I'm here based on how you would like to work with us for your automotive needs. And that's not my need. That's not my manager telling me I need a freaking 48% conversion rates to appointment. You know what
I think is interesting is kind of the same study, kind of going what we were talking about here, that same study that I was reading. What I thought was really surprised, one of the questions they asked is, would you be willing to fill out credit applications before coming into the dealership? And I was blown away with this stat because it sounded incredibly high to me, but I'm sure there's some truth to it. 72% were willing to fill out something to do with financing or credit, because again, they felt like it was going to save them time, and there was going to be less pressure around, when it came to the F&I side of the business. And, I just feel like, look, I'm originally from the States. And, I remember when I first moved up here, I was already used to a very, finance first car. Process. Yeah, I was already used to kind of a finance first and car second kind of a mentality, right? And I feel like Canadians, we're behind in that space. Or it's
very leery. I mean,
have you thought
take
of
a look at CASA laws, right? Like take a look at, our privacy policies and things like this. Canadians are more conservative when it comes to communication. That's another reason why communication needs to be high quality. Canadians are a little leery as well in terms of giving their phone numbers away, being contacted, things like this. So that's why, your initial reply, your initial value proposition needs to be strong, needs to make a strong impression. But in terms of online, like I think a lot of dealerships, a lot of salespeople, or even F&I are afraid of moving to those platforms because they think they're going to lose some of those opportunities to show the customer a product. But when you show the customer your whole menu and you make that customer, become the owner of that transaction and they built it themselves, that's how they take ownership, right? So you talk about making the customer feel in control. In digital communication, sometimes it's as easy as, I hear a lot of people in service, how would you like to pay for your repair? I simply try to get them to turn that into, would you prefer to pay by credit card or by Interact, right? So it's all about how we put ourselves out there to make the customer feel like they are in control, that they have a choice. And when we tell them what we can do for them, right? So for example, you get a lead and they talk about, hey, I've got a 2012 Honda Accord. Can you give me an estimate on that trade value? I'm interested in the Hyundai Tucson, whatever. And we focus on the Tucson, right? We're not focusing on the trade. Hey, we'd love to take your trade. When can you come in so that my pre-owned manager can take a look at your vehicle, right? So then the customer stops reading, right then and there, because the customer is no longer in control. You want him to go in, you want him to show up so that you can evaluate their car. Changing the game and becoming customer centric is knowing that things like that bother the shit out of customers. So try to offer.
It would bother the shit out of everybody. Like, I mean, that's the kicker. I don't know why we keep thinking that like customers are different than us, because we're all consumers,
that's right?
But when you're talking to a dealership, they're like, oh, customers. I'm like, bullshit. You would do the exact same thing, you know, and we are talking, you know, that kind of goes into kind of the, you know, the process, the experience, kind of another topic that we were talking about today is, you know, that experience starts with communication.
That's right.
And I think the customer is expecting to have some level of control of the communication, the frequency of that communication, and that starts that process. Too often, I think that dealers think that the experience is just kind of like this mythical, like, you know, dragon or unicorn that everyone's trying to.
It's going to cost us so much money.
It's going to cost us a lot of money.
Right?
It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of resources. When in reality, an experience is all these little tiny things, and we can process the crap out of these little tiny things, you know. And I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on, you know, how do we process the experience?
Wow. I mean, again, comes back down to communication. I was listening to your show a little earlier on this week. They were talking about the fact that, you know, they're training some people in terms of how to behave in front of a customer when you're customer facing, right? Because those people are not going to be taking leads but, you know, if we realize that, you know, we are consumers, our consumers are just like us. You know, yes, some people are going to prefer to come into the dealership. Yes, some people are going to be ready. They're going to come into the dealership a lot more ready if you prep them in advance with some great communication, video content, and your close is going to be that much higher if you've paved the way for that. If you keep in your cards close the way we used to do it when it comes to payment examples, when it comes to trade evaluation, I mean, the simple word estimate, like, let's not make a big deal out of this. I'm going to provide you with an estimate for your vehicle based on the market value. Do you have some time today to discuss that with me at 3:30? Moving that customer to the next level of communication. Everybody's got to improve their communication. That's going to be the game changer going forward. So whether you're handling leads, whether you're handling phones, whether you're in person, there will be some digital communication aspect to your follow-up with that customer, whether they buy or not, whether they need more information, whether you want a referral from them. This is where people can really improve their games going forward, is by focusing in on that. The better you communicate through all these tools that are not facing, the better you're going to build the trust, the more your customers are going to respond to you, and the more you're going to close. So it's a mathematical formula, and it all starts with the quality of communications we put out there.
It really is quality of the communication. I'll give you kind of a cool story. I have a dealership doing this, and again, what it is, you know, they first talked about the process and then worked backwards, you know, to the technology, and they wanted the customer to be more connected during that time frame, you know, between signature and picking up the car. What they were running into is they were running into some buyer remorse or concerns or something along that lines, and they had to figure out a way to, you know, to kind of adjust that. So they first defined what they wanted in the process, right? They wanted the customer to feel connected to the delivery. So it was all the steps that were going on and the things that were happening. So I thought what was really cool, what they did is they actually created a WhatsApp group for every every car that they delivered. So for every car that they delivered, they created a WhatsApp group, you know, that had the F9 manager on it, the salesperson on it, the general manager on it, and then the service manager on it. And in this F9 and in their WhatsApp, you know, titling would be the stock number of the car. And, you know, the customer would actually see the conversation going on between the departments as things were happening. So the service manager goes, "Yep, we're getting its PDI done right now. Detailing should be done on Thursday around 2 p.m." And, you know, it was, now, of course, not everybody knows this, the customer's there and seeing and watching it, but then the customer can also, you know, engage in the conversation as well and talk about connecting, you know, and look, and this is free tech, you know, but what it is they wanted an experience. Right? They set a goal. The goal was clear. They wanted better CSI. They wanted higher confidence in the consumer once they've made the purchase. I guess I don't know why they were running into issues behind buyer's remorse, but they are. I know for any of our American listeners out there, here it takes us at least 2 to 3 days to actually deliver a vehicle. I know that sounds crazy.
Yeah, I know. I talked to my friends in Georgia, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah, it's like 2 hours. The customer, it's
45 minutes in Florida.
Burning gas and killing bugs, but yeah, it's just not the case up there. So I thought this was a really cool example of how someone can process the experience through communication. I thought you get a kick out of it. Now let's talk a little bit. I want to go back a little bit. I want to kind of talk about a little bit about consumer behavior trends. Because I think there's some new ones that have come up or things have changed. So I'd love to kind of get your thought on how some of those consumer trends and how they've changed, buying behavior.
Well, buying behavior, I think the 2 key words I want people to remember today is simplification. Simplification. So making things easier for the customer. That's what they're looking for. They're looking to get connected, get pricing, get questions answered, get video visuals in order to be able to make a decision to come in order to be able to make a decision to make an appointment or whatever else. So simplification is one of the things that behavior that we're looking at in terms of new customer behavior. We take a look at that in terms of what was happening before, where you had about 35% of people pulling the trigger on a decision for a vehicle within 30 days. Now you have 57% of people pulling the decision within 30 days. So it's almost, 75% more than before. So it's accelerated. So they're making decisions quicker throughout this, past year, but what they want is for us to simplify that process. So in terms of evaluating their trade, in terms of, showing them examples of leasing versus financing. What does a 48-month look like versus a 72? What can we do for them? And I really like the example that you just gave about the group on WhatsApp, because what these guys are doing is actually making the customer realize that it takes a village to deliver a car.
Well, that was the other thing too. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we should be putting out there, because the customer is not going to see the value in terms of only having a relationship with one person at your dealership, right? So how everyone communicates, you buy a vehicle, customers don't realize sometimes that, that dealership employs 40 to 100 to 200 people. That's, 40 to 100 to 200 of your neighbors in your community with their kids that play hockey with yours. Like, this is a really great business. And when customers go in there trying to squeeze everything out of the dealer, it's because they haven't seen the value. So if we can do activities like the one you just talked about, where we implicate the customer into the delivery, which is the most exciting time, right? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, come on, how jacked do you have to be?
In the past that they did their F&I at delivery, and I'm like, that is such a buzzkill. Okay. What are you doing? Right? Delivery should be fun if the customer's involved, if you can use video and communication to make that customer involved, whether it's a photo of the vehicle coming off the boat in Halifax or Vancouver.
Oh no, see,
that's
else. I mean, that was kind of the other things they can put into, that WhatsApp. They were putting in videos of saying, hey guys, it's ready. Look, just come out of detail. Like, I mean, talk about, like I said, it didn't cost them anything. Right. And the cool thing is this WhatsApp chat group, we actually found that the customers were actually continuing to use it even after the delivery.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So even after the delivery, they got home and they were like, hey, I can't remember what you told me. What does this button do again?
What's this? Phone again?
What's this light? Where's this light? And it was like, the cool thing is because you had the service manager and you had the sales manager and the salesperson on there. So whoever was available to jump in and have the conversation, they could have it. So they really felt like it was a community effort in the delivering and the servicing of that. And I just thought, what an amazing process to an experience.
Oh. Totally. And the more you use these tools, I mean, because that sales process has shortened, right? So we have 57% of people buying within the first 30 days. We've got the rest of them spread over, month 1 to 3. That's the next wave of about 20%. And then the rest of them are contacting you, are only going to pull the trigger after day 90 and between, 6 months, right? So in terms of longevity, in terms of keeping the customer engaged, all these little things like that contribute to the fact that we want the customer to feel that it's not not just about the metal. It's about how we have their back where it comes to service, when it comes to finance. We're not passing the buck around when they have a salesperson. That person is, needs to adapt and become an account manager, right, for that customer,
Yes,
and oversee every aspect. And technology surely allows us to give the customer visibility on all the brilliant things we do at the dealership behind the scenes to make that a special experience, right? So,
Well, the other thing too is they actually increased their accessory sales. Because what was happening was there was this open form of communication, this open group of conversation. So, even it was funny, even some of the customers were engaging with the chat group months after the vehicle had been delivered.
Right.
And it was just like, and they actually showed me one. They're like, hey guys, we're going skiing. And I don't know exactly which ski rack works on, my new Murano. Which one should I do? And of course, then the service manager chimes in and will say, oh, well, we actually are a Thule certified, dealer. We actually have those things in stock. If you want to come by, the guy responds back, great. I'll be there tomorrow. Didn't even ask about the price. No. Just straight up said, perfect. I'm coming.
He needs a Thule. He needs a ski rack. He's going skiing. The price is not first on his mind, right? So too often, I think we get bogged down by, I have, like we said before, an inquiry. I have a lead. I'm going to sell a car, my conversion rate, right? But you have to bring that customer through a process of decision making, and you have to make yourself available to them, and you have to communicate brilliantly. I see so much stuff go out there sometimes that's just not thought out. And we are in a world of communication, whether industry you're talking about, right? Like you get emails from your kids' schools, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Is the title, optimized? Is the introduction pretty solid? Like, what's going out there? What are you expecting as a customer? That's what your customers are expecting out there. Today we have a meeting, Jason, we have each other in the calendar, right? So how many of our customers out there only live with a calendar? Right? So when you're booking an appointment with them, when you're trying to schedule a home test drive, when you're trying to get them in for service, we need to be using those same tools that the customer is using to save themselves time and make it part of our process as well.
That's true. I'm actually surprised to see how often, as a dealership, we'll schedule an appointment with someone and then we don't send them a actual appointment invite, so they can add into it. But isn't it mind-boggling? Like I've
oh my God, Jason, I wouldn't pick up my kids if it wasn't in my calendar.
This happens to me all the time. If it's not in my calendar, I wouldn't simply do it. But it's great because, that has that built in, like, again, this is like, we're not talking about going out and spending $1,000 on new tech. What we're talking about is creating, buyer-centric processes, all right, and develop and really documenting those processes, then working backwards towards technology so we can actually execute on these things. But I do want to go a little farther into, what it means to be buyer-centric, because
buyer-centric, right? We say that word a lot.
We say it all the time.
What does it mean to be buyer-centric? We have these trendy words that come out once in a while. I'll talk to you about Michelin a little bit in terms of buyer-centricity. When they got to North America in the 70s, they wanted their tires, which were premium, to be only at certain locations, right? Because the location had to be clean, it had to be this, it had to be that. The experience was very important. We only directed Michelin customers to those types of places. The 80s came around, the 90s came around, and these big companies that have been around for 100 years became buyer-centric. Before us in automotive kind of knew what that meant. And that meant listening to the customer, and that meant, having Michelin tires at Canadian Tire and Costco, having them in our car dealership where the customer's already bringing their cars in. Becoming buyer-centric is doing everything possible to make it easy for the customer to deal with our brand in a way that, enriches their experience and in a way where we demonstrate value beyond our product. Nobody walks into an Apple store with the expectation of getting a grumpy face, right? So,
no,
people and product go hand in hand. Becoming buyer-centric means taking a look at the data. What are customers expecting? They're expecting speed. They're expecting answers. They want pricing. They want to know about your incentives. They want to see the car before coming in. Sometimes they don't want to come in. Sometimes they do. You have to read that data in order to formulate your responses and your follow-up strategies so that you sound like the customer wants you to sound finally. So becoming buyer-centric is taking ourselves out of the equation and how many things we have to book and deliver in this beyond the 30 days of our cycle in automotive, and taking a look at our customer as our book of business. How can we expand it? And really, honestly, how to expand that is through communication, it's through frequent follow-up, it's through value, it's through video, it's through generating exciting opportunities for the customer to participate in the dealership culture. So there's my spiel for you.
But no, it is, right? I mean, I think, but I think we got to go a little deeper though when it comes to like being buyer centric. And I love how Michelin did it, and I think we can learn a lot from that. But I think of like, what does it mean to be buyer centric, like in the service department? Because like, look, when I think of service, like we spend just an obscene amount of time talking about retention.
Sure. Yes, God bless those people.
Right. And we don't seem to spend enough time talking about acquisition. And I feel like the companies out there that really are truly buyer centric in their efforts, all right, seem to kind of have this almost kind of built-in acquisition strategy. So what does it mean to you to be buyer centric within a service department?
Well, it means having the customers back, right? So they trusted you, they bought the car here, right? So now here's their pit crew. First of all, you introducing your customer to the pit crew that are going to have their back, that are going to be taking a call 5 minutes before they close because they're stuck somewhere with a flat. Those are the guys that are going to have the customers back. So in terms of becoming buyer-centric in service, we have to basically make sure our salespeople bring our customers to service when it comes to introducing them to the department that works hand in hand with sales to make sure their vehicle is ready for winter, whatever it is. And becoming buyer-centric in service also means, letting go of some of the old style technology or old style way of thinking. Oh, Mrs. Jones, I have some news about your vehicle. Could you please call me back at the dealership? I want to discuss it with you. Screw that, right? Like we need to send a text. We need to, make a video about what needs to be done on the car, show the customer why we're proposing this type of service, and then get them to agree to it and base it on whatever method of communication they're using, right? Whether it's, you can introduce mobile pay, whether you can tell your customers that you can pick up the vehicle. Becoming buyer-centric, especially in a time like this of pandemic where people are a little bit leery about going into commercial spaces, is providing and telling the customer about everything we can do that's non-typical, whether it's picking up their car at work or home, whether it's valet service, whether it's contactless service, mobile pay, all these things.
Yes.
That's what we need to do. And we need to circle those messages out through social media so that people know that it's not just about the metal, it's about a village, making sure they have a customer's back, right?
Well, and it's right. It's having the customers back. And you said something a little earlier that really got me thinking too, is, the amount of data points that we collect at a dealership is absolutely just crazy, right? And I feel like sometimes we don't do enough to digitalize that. But like I'll give you, for example, like let's say a customer comes in and we measure their tire depth. Look, we do this all the time. It's a pretty common process, right? And they come in and it's at 5 millimeters. Well, we know that's getting pretty dang close, right? But we also know, based on how many times this person's come in, their kind of average mileage. We know that to go from 5 millimeters down to 3 millimeters, we may only be talking less than 10,000 kilometers worth of driving. So, this is where I think, buyer-centric kind of kicks in. It's like, this is where I make that note in the system that ensures that the next time they come in, right, the first thing that we talk about, or first thing I have ready is their tire quote. I'll prep them for the conversation in advance. Look, Mr. Customer, you're at 5 millimeters. All right, we're going to have
what that means
exactly.
Is, right.
We're going to have this conversation next time you come in, okay? And, because based on how you drive, we're expecting that you're going to have this kind of wear, but it's being proactive. See, that's where I see. I think some of the businesses that I do business with, or I purchase from regularly, right? They're proactive in it. I think of I have one of those Nespresso coffee machines. Yeah. You have one?
Yeah, I have one. Yes, I'm bankrupt and I have one. Yeah.
I know, no kidding. It
Those will
does make
hassle kill ya.
yeah, man, it does make a damn good cup of coffee though. I will admit
It
I do like
does.
it. But I love that. See, I do all my ordering online, right?
Yeah.
And they actually have data on me on how often I order and how much I order. So
What
they actually
flavor you like better?
proactively, yeah, they actually, and it's almost kind of weird sometimes. Like they'll
Yeah, it's Orwellian a
proactively,
little bit.
yeah, they'll proactively reach out to me and say, hey, you're probably running a little low. All right. Do you just want to go ahead and just hit the resubmit button on what you ordered last time? And I'm like going, gosh, that's buyer-centric. I mean, talk about really making it
Yeah.
easy for me to do business with you. And
Right.
I feel like dealers can do more of that. Let's talk about buyer-centric on the sales side. So kind of keeping that in mind, how can a sales department be buyer-centric and make it easier for the customer to do business with us?
Well, by telling them how easy it is to do business with us. I mean, we've been claiming it's easy to do business with us, but is it really easy, right?
That's very true.
Is it really easy? Because I'll tell you right now, I have a lot of friends in real estate, and it's easier to buy a house in Canada than it is to buy a car sometimes, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So becoming buyer centric is being conscious of the fact that people's time is precious. There's we live in the automotive industry, you and I, we eat, breathe, love it, we probably dream about it and things like that, wake up in the morning all
Yep.
rearing to go.
Mhm.
That's our life, but that's not our customer's life. They're engineers, they're accountants, they have kids, they have hockey, they're working from home all of a sudden where they didn't work from home before, they're using delivery services that they never used before. Becoming buyer centric is looking where customers are being engaged, so we know video is strong, right? Video is probably the most important thing you can do in order to make a customer want or not want that car, right? That is like 46% of customers told us that video is actually what pushed them towards a yes or no. So becoming buyer centric is reading that data, like you said. Like we use our data to do our ads, we do, bookings, we do our image at our dealership, we use our data for that stuff, but we need to use that data as well. If people want to save time, well, we need to provide them with a process that's centered around text, video, digital communication, at home test drives, at home service. Becoming buyer centric means we are no longer going to make you come in and do what we want you to do. We're going to go to you, and here's how we do it, and here's what our customers are saying about it and why they love it. So it comes back down to, what is your preferred method of communication, Mr. Customer? And that's how we're going to work with you. That's the easiest way to get buyer centric. Take yourself out of that equation. And if you become more in line with how your customers want to work with you, because if you do have an existing book of business, you know who these people are.
Oh, for
Hopefully
sure.
you have a sales manager that taught you one time that, you need to know what your people do for a living, right? So you can appreciate where they're coming from. So, reaching out to them when you're keeping that relationship going after the sale, knowing they're a busy entrepreneur or they have a catering company or whatever it is, telling them everything that you can do and answering their questions digitally, being there for them around the holidays, the dealership's still open, we can assist you, positioning what you can do for them that requires the least amount of time and provides them with great answers. That's what buyer-centric is all about.
Well, look, when it comes to the BDC, I think the original model of the BDC was to be buyer-centric and was to be customer-centric. And then at some point in time over the years, somehow that got put into just dial for dollars. And we lost that actual, like, the customer service part of BDC, and look, I know that you've worked for some amazing companies that have had that mentality around really being customer centric on the phone and in person. So I'd love to kind of get your thoughts then on, how does a BDC, maintain that buyer centric, kind of mentality and not lose it?
Well, I mean, a BDC is a great opportunity, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people do BDC, like you just said, with a way of just trying to get that customer to that appointment, trying to not share that much information and filter everything for our sales guys so they only get the creme de la creme. A BDC needs to become based on product knowledge. It needs to become, inside sales. That's what it is. That's what
Exactly.
a BDC should be, where you're informing the customer about technologies, you're answering their question, you're able to provide MSRP payment, ooh, dollars and
hold on,
numbers, right? Without involving someone else. And if there is a complicated situation, that's where BDC can escalate that and work with sales in order to move that customer through their decision-making process. But somewhere we unfortunately shit the bed with BDC and just turned them into receptionists, like glorified receptionists, right?
Yeah,
And
just
that's
turn them
not
into like
where
a
they need
call
to
center.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to basically enable our BDC to act as inside sales. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to be negotiating price through the BDC, but again, I'm of the school of, I dream of the day I will throw a party when we stop negotiating for the price of a car. Like, this is completely 1984 and it shouldn't happen anymore. And the more value we provide to the customer, the more transparency, the more clarity, the more great touch points, whether it's BDC, whether it's sales, whether it's service, that customer is going to see our value go up, and that price negotiation is not going to make any sense anymore, right? So,
oh no, and for sure. Look, at the end of the day, I think if your business is really going to be buyer/customer centric, then every individual in your business needs to be prepared to handle whatever situation there is.
The silos need to break down,
and that's
right?
kind of what and I think, look, the overall theme of this entire podcast has been that, right? Like, if you're going to provide an experience, you're going to process your way to it. If you're going to be buyer centric, you're going to process your way to it. But you first have to have the desire to actually want to. Because you can sit here and listen to us talk and watch us, and you can nod your head up and down, but if you don't take that first step and actually develop out this process, you're not going to go anywhere. Now, Carla, I know it's getting towards the tail end of our time, and before I let you go, I think for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now, and have just thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today, would like to
fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun, and for those who would like to connect with you and learn more about what you do and kind of follow along with your journey, what is the best way to do that?
Oh, listen, I mean, you can check us out on www.UpinMotion.com. That's our website, but check me out as well on LinkedIn, Carla Ksonzek, and our Facebook page. We're excited to go into the future, going forward with online webinars, online video. We're a company that's been all over Canada and some parts of the US in person. But we're going to bring that knowledge going forward to online webinars, live sessions, so we can have a greater reach. So if you're interested in tuning up this Q1 and making sure that you go out there with a really great game face on to handle all your digital communication and your operating rhythm for follow-ups, we'd sure love to connect with you sometime in the year. So look out for us online.
That's awesome. Hey, Carla, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been an absolute blast. You have yourself an amazing day.
You too, Jason. See you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy Mob podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to sign up to be a mobster at strategymob.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.